What's up, Kings fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Rebounds podcast. Unfortunately, Calvin is not feeling well today, so I am working double time. It is Barry and Barry today, but that's okay because we're here, we're drinking beers, and we're talking about your Sacramento Kings. In today's news, the Sacramento Kings are 3-0 in the Summer League, fueled by some amazing defense and amazing performances by their rookie Davion Mitchell. As many of you know, the Sacramento Kings did win the Summer League championship back in 2014. Not that that really shows any success going on towards the regular season, but it does give a little bit of momentum going into the season. Unfortunately, we do see teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves and the New Orleans Pelicans are also 3-0 like the Sacramento Kings. Both didn't do too well this year as well. But it's okay. I'll take wins anytime I can get them. Isn't that right, Barry? That's right, Barry. I got my draft cap on. Unfortunately, it was a little bit late this year. Thanks, Fanatics. Calvin and I both anticipated having these draft caps with our suits during the NBA draft, but it's okay. We still got them. Still going to represent your Sacramento Kings. Very happy to see the Kings 3-0 in the Summer League. You're right. It does not mean much, but that is okay. They are doing well. Some other things to mention in this week's news. The Kings have guaranteed the contracts of Metu and Jones, adding to that logjam in the front court. The Tristan Thompson trade did become official as well. And they re-signed Richaun Holmes. So there are a ton of bigs on this roster. And we had all talked about just a few weeks ago there being a ton of guards. And one of the reasons why they shipped DeLon Wright over for Tristan Thompson in that 3-team trade. That just tells me that there's still some more movement, still some things that could happen for the Kings. Maybe gearing up for a possible trade, or just trying to add depth for this upcoming season. As many of you know, with the COVID pandemic, players missing games due to quarantine and other stuff like that, short turnaround time, it does pay to have a deeper team these days. Look at last year's team, or last year's squad. One of the biggest problems with this team was depth and also defense. But once the starters came off the floor, there really wasn't much depth on this bench. So adding extra players to this squad really makes a lot of sense. Considering when you draft best available, you might sign best available, you're going to end up with a bunch of extra players in other positions. And you end up moving those players before the deadline, trying to add extra assets to your team. Or if you're unlucky enough to have an injury or two, you have another guy that's ready to just kind of step in there right in that position. I do want to talk a little bit more about the Ben Simmons-Siakam drama. I know we talked about this a little bit on the last podcast, actually the last couple podcasts, but it doesn't seem like anything else has happened in the past week towards one of these moves. Ben Simmons has stopped talking to the 76ers. He's ghosted Joel Embiid, which is one of his closest teammates. So he seems to be wanting out of Philadelphia. And I don't blame him, considering drafted number 1 overall, was supposed to be the rebuild piece of this team. And now he feels a little bit left out. He feels like he is the scapegoat on this franchise. So I don't see any other teams willing to step up and pay the Daryl Morey asking price for Ben Simmons. Maybe the Kings can wait out a little bit longer and see what happens there. I don't see a Siakam trade happening. I know many Kings fans would love for Siakam to be on this team. I am one of those Kings fans, but unfortunately, I don't really see a need for the Raptors to move Siakam. I don't see Siakam wanting out of the Raptors. And honestly, I don't really see the Kings putting together a package that will wow these Raptors. So, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to wait a couple more weeks to figure out what happens with Ben Simmons or Siakam. There's been talks about Damian Lillard, and maybe the Portland Trailblazers were going to try and go after one of those guys to keep Dame in Portland. The Kings just keep building. They just keep adding depth. They keep adding good players to this team. Like I said, 3-0 in the Summer League. Really happy about that. And we're just pushing towards the next season. Isn't that right, Barry? Yeah, unfortunately, I don't see a deal happening for either of those guys in the next week, possibly next month, unfortunately. And if I'm those teams, I don't blame them. If I'm the Sixers, I'm not moving Ben Simmons unless I get some good value from him. If I'm the Toronto Raptors, I don't see any reason to move Pascal Siakam. If I'm the Sixers, I'm a little bit more inclined to move Ben than if I'm the Raptors. But if I'm both teams, I'm not going to move either of these guys unless I'm getting adequate value, because they're both locked up long term and they're both supposed to be professional basketball players. So if I'm a GM or if I'm a coach of a team and I have a guy that doesn't want to play, maybe Buddy Hield or something like that, doesn't want to play for my team, that's okay. I'm going to wait. I'm going to let them do their job. If they want to get paid, they better show up. So I think that it's going to be a little while before we have a resolve to either of those issues. I do want to talk a little bit today about Coach Walton. I know momentum around him losing his job in Sacramento has died down, which is a good thing, considering he does have a very close relationship with De'Aaron Fox, who is the star player on the Sacramento Kings. And if you are a franchise, if you're a Sacramento Kings type franchise, you definitely want to keep your star player happy. So Luke Walton seems to be with the Kings the next year. I know Monte McNair said that, yes, he's going to be back. And unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of Luke Walton. But as a fan, I do love to see my front office making decisions and sticking with them. So Monte said last year, Luke Walton's our guy. He said it again this year. Luke Walton will be coaching the Sacramento Kings next season. I think we'll have to see how the season plays out, because, if they're 2-30 to start out, I don't think Luke Walton's going to be continuing through the rest of that. It is very possible, but I think that's very unlikely. So if the Kings can get out to a hot start, kind of like last year before that losing streak, winning a couple games at least, that might help Luke's job security a little bit. But honestly, it's really going to just depend on how the team plays and what Monty's plan is. I think he's been really clear as far as personnel decisions. He's been clear as far as player decisions. But he hasn't really been clear as far as expectations for this team. And, if you're Monte McNair and you're looking at this roster, what do you see is the potential for this team now? Not a couple years down the road, but right now. If this team wins 10 games, are you satisfied? If this team wins 30 games, are you satisfied? I know for many Kings fans, I, for one, am not going to be satisfied until they win at least 41 games, because I want to get above that 500 threshold. I think that will guarantee us a spot in the playoffs, but, you never know. It really depends. Maybe we have to win 45 games to make the playoffs this year. So that, for me, is going to be a big factor. Monty has definitely done a great job so far up to this point, so I'm trusting him and his decisions. I think that Luke Walton is a capable coach in the NBA. He hasn't really, impressed many Kings fans over the last 2 years. We saw what he did with the Lakers, with LeBron. And, that leaves a lot of us wanting more. But you do look back a little bit further to his interim stint with the Golden State Warriors. When Steve Kerr was out, he won a ton of games. I know you're saying any coach could win with that team, and that may be true. But an important aspect of a coach is monitoring or keeping personalities down, making sure that different personalities can mesh together. And when you are coaching a 70-win team that's got championship hopes, you got a lot of egos on that team. You got a lot of stuff going on. And if you're a coach, you got to manage all those. Maybe he was just doing it temporarily, part-time, until Coach Kerr could get back. But it does give him a little bit of a trial by fire. So I'm hoping that the Kings can pick up some continuity this year. I'm hoping they can pick up their defense this year. Luke Walton has shown that he can play defense, or he can coach defense. We saw the Lakers team significantly improve in defense over Luke Walton's tenure. I know he wasn't with the Warriors long enough, but they did have a great defensive team. You look at Rico Hines, you look at some of the other assistant coaches they brought on board. Shout out to Bobby Jackson. Really happy to see him now on the coaching staff. And also, I do want to give a huge shout out to my guy, Doug Christie. I'm going to miss you in the booth, Doug. I loved hearing you talk about the game. You got a lot of knowledge to give, but I'm happy you're going to be there on the court with our guys, giving them the knowledge so that they can show us on the court. So pretty happy about all that. I know Doug has been known as a defensive player through his tenure with the Kings, and he just brings that physicality and that mentality. So very happy to see that. I'm happy to see these extra defensive guys the Kings have brought in with dog mentalities as well. So maybe Doug can help light a fire under some of the other guys. So really, really happy to see that. Barry, was there anything else that you wanted to mention? Yes, huge shout out to Doug Christie. I'm really happy to have him on the sidelines with these Sacramento Kings. It's still yet to be told who will be replacing him on the sidelines reporting on the games as the color commentator. I know there's been a bunch of guys shifting around in that role over the last year since we lost Jerry Reynolds and Grant Napier. So there are a few guys that could fill that position. I would love to see Katie Hunter moving down there a little bit closer. Katie is a great basketball mind. She loves the Sacramento Kings. She's been with the franchise for a long time. So I'd love to see Katie get that opportunity. That would be fantastic. Anyways, guys, I wanted to thank you all for joining us on another episode of the Royal Rebounds podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like this video. Sorry Calvin's not here this week. He will definitely be back soon. I know you guys are tired of listening to me talk this whole time, right, Barry? We never get tired of listening to you talk, Barry. I know you got a lot of knowledge to give on these Sacramento Kings, so we're happy you're here with us. But yes, Katie Hunter would be a great choice to fill that role. I know I am excited for the season to start. We still got a couple months to go, but we are getting closer. There are things happening. I hope COVID Delta strain just does not derail this season, because that would be horrible. For me, that was one of the worst parts about the beginning of the pandemic. Was I was finally at home, no work to do, no basketball on. So unfortunately that was a bummer. But Barry, I'll let you wrap up the show. Thanks again, guys, for joining us on another episode of the Royal Rebounds podcast. We'll see you guys soon, and in the meantime, go Kings!